Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Executive, a place where executives share their stories, life lessons, and advice on how to make it at the highest level. Today, we've got a super exciting guest and a good friend of mine, Jonathan Jachimiec, who is the Chief Financial Officer of MycoTechnology. MycoTechnology is a food ingredient company that has raised capital from Tyson Foods, Kellogg Ventures, and a lot of big names that I'm excited to get into. And they are doing some incredible things in the food industry and really solving for even things like the intake of sugar, which I'm sure Jonathan will get into. Jonathan, great to have you here.
Matt, thank you so much for having me as well.
It's going to be fun. Well, tell us about MycoTechnology. What's it all about? How did it start? And how did you get involved?
Yeah, so MycoTechnology at this point is almost 9 years old. Started in a basement in Longmont, Colorado, between two of the co-founders, really trying to find ways to make food taste better. From there, they had brought on two additional co-founders that ultimately created MycoTechnology of where it is today. And what that is really debunking the myth that if it tastes bad, it's good for you. If it tastes good, it's bad for you. So our first product aims to do exactly that, be able to reduce the sugar, sodium, fat content of food without sacrificing the flavor and taste of said product. From there, we moved into a number of different protein sources as well, being able to ferment protein isolates to make them taste better and more functional.
Incredible. And I know you're the finance guy, but it's fun to talk about the product a little bit as well. But I mean, you guys are doing your blocker. I mean, what does that really mean? How does it, instead of being like, a sugar additive, it's actually blocking the bitterness in like a coffee or a chocolate?
Exactly that, Matt. So what our bitter blocker does is it blocks your bitter receptors on your tongue. Now, why do we taste bitterness in the first place? It was a defense mechanism to keep us from eating things that, while we're looking for in the forest and elsewhere. And if it tasted bitter, it typically was toxic. And so that was our defense mechanism of not allowing us to eat products that could ultimately kill us. Now, at this point in time, there's a lot of products that are inherently bitter. It's not just toxins in the world. It's coffee, chocolate, tea, grain, like wheat, ancient grain, quinoa, and the like, that all have bitter attributes. So it's a lot of things that you just don't inherently think that would be bitter do make it a challenge for food formulators to create products that taste how we would expect them to taste. So our bitter blocker is able to, again, block the bitterness on your tongue and be able to then allow the flavorists to reduce the sugar, sodium, and other flavoring that are in the product and ultimately make it more healthy for you. So the two cheapest ingredients on the planet, sugar and salt, are used as masking agents quite a bit. And that's why when you look at the back of the label, a lot of products, especially products that are that are bulk packaged will tend to be very high, in both sugar and salt because it's cheap and is able to add additional bulk to the product.
And then is this something where you put it in your coffee and like almost a creamer and then it blocks it, or how does it exactly work?
No. So, a big thing about MycoTechnology is we are business to business. Okay. We help the CPGs and our strategic investors create products that are more healthy for the population. And so the Clear IQ product line is typically used in parts per million. And so, that makes it a challenge not only for us, but for formulators as well. So we need to make sure we have a keen eye on how much is used. Ultimately, too much doesn't always mean that's going to block more bitterness.
Got it. So this is actually going into almost the coffee beans or, insert X product that then goes to the consumer.
Yeah. So, a good case in point, you want to sell an RTD coffee beverage that will have some bitterness. You want sugar in there, but you don't want to showcase the 30 grams of sugar that a lot of products have currently in the marketplace. You could utilize our product in there and be able to reduce the sugar content by upwards of 50%.
Really interesting. And obviously, there's a lot of attention on that in the space, and that's led to a lot of investment from some of the groups that I mentioned, including Kellogg's investment arm. What is it for them that is so interesting about MycoTechnology and what you're doing? Is it a strategic opportunity for a lot of them?
Absolutely. So, customers like Kellogg's, for instance, do want to create products that are ultimately healthier. But then there is that market perception too that if you put on the side, of the box or in the front of the box that you're 50% less sugar, there's sometimes that perception that the product must not be as tasty, right? So they're just like back in the day where a lot of CPG firms were significantly increasing the sugar content. And now you're looking at plays where they're secretly taking out the sugar because of that perception. But it doesn't end there. A lot of our strategics are also in the protein field as well. The customers like Tyson and investors like Tyson are no longer a chicken company, right? They are a protein company. We realize that there is a need still for animal-based product, but animal-based product alone, nor cultured meat alone, will be able to feed a population of 9 billion people by 2030, 2040 timeframe.
Mm. And then what's Michael's role in that as, the population continues to grow?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like
so that's our
Tyson.
Yeah, so that's our FermentIQ product line. What I can tell you is that we are the protein engine, so to speak, behind Planterra's Ozo burgers and chicken that they have now in not only Colorado, but they've scored additional distribution across the United States at this point. So fastest growing meat analog company. And about coming up to top 5 in size.
Wow.
And more companies will continue to add to this game, even though the meat alternative industry as a whole has not grown as significant as it has in years past.
Really interesting.
But meat alone is.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, meat alone is not the only place that we stop as well from a protein perspective. Dairy, the alt dairy market is by far the biggest. It's been around for quite some time, and that's for a number of different reasons. Whether you're lactose intolerant or you're just looking at taking a more of a vegan lifestyle, our customers want choices, and that's what we're starting to see. And so our product line also works in a number of dairy alternatives as well, from milk to cheese to yogurt and ice cream.
Super fascinating. And recently you got a newest investor and really a joint venture in the Omen Investment Authority, I believe it is. Can you walk us through, what that is and, how that came up and how they came about? What is the joint venture with them?
Yeah, absolutely. And so Oman being in the Middle East, this joint venture is a way to allow the Middle East to diversify away from oil, as well as decrease their dependence on food importation. We used to say, and it's really bad timing, that the next war would be about food, but really that is a significant concern for the world in general. As we continue to grow our population, as we continue to use other energy sources and diversify away from oil, the next limiting natural resource will be food and protein. And so being able to vertically integrate that into your country is very much on the minds of not only the Middle East, but the world as a whole.
And how did a joint venture, with Oman come about? How did that even, was there a relationship prior that they were the prior investors, or how does something like that come about?
No, new investors,
Okay.
but actively looking in the food tech realm, and it's as a lot of VCs do. They work together and they talk about deals and prior deals that they've worked on in the past, and it ultimately led to a very good acquaintance of ours to pass our name on to an additional investor, being the OIA, and looking at how we can really help them. So the investment portion is one, but again, being able to diversify away from oil, be able to increase protein and ultimately increase net exports of food, and lastly, being able to use a waste stream, in this case, dates, was very much of interest to the OIA. So it was really a twofold. So there's really two term sheets going on that we're negotiating at the same time. One was for the lead in our Series E, but the other one was for how we would create this joint venture and really help the area out as well.
And then you ended up going forward with the joint venture and instead of the Series E, essentially?
We did both.
Oh, you did both. Okay.
Yep,
Awesome.
yep. So we closed our Series E officially back in February for $85 million, and on top of that, we've now officially announced our joint venture in Oman.
That's really exciting. Well, from your perspective as a CFO, what is it? What does a joint venture, take? Like, what are the things that you had to make sure? Like, what was your role, I guess, in the joint venture?
Yeah, so at the beginning, it's all the negotiations, right? And it's separate from the traditional term sheet negotiations that both parties would be working on. But ultimately, for the joint venture, it was finding ways to work what Myco can bring to the table at the size that we're currently at, and what the resources of the OA would be able to bring to the table to really help get this started and move forward. So. Now that the term sheet for the joint venture is signed and the LLC has been created, we're working on the standard, typical business logistics that you would have to do to start up any company. That means building up your relationships with external parties, whether that's banks, legal teams, vendors, and customers as well. So we're currently doing all of that as we speak.
Very neat. And then because you're a CFO, we talk a lot about ROI, and we've got a lot of financial people that listen to this. What do you, as you could look back, you've been with Myco for several years now, close to 5 years?
Over 6, going on 7 years.
6 years. Okay. What would you say you look back and you're like, that was a great ROI that we did really early on as a company? What had a great ROI for you guys that you invested in?
Yeah, it's ultimately the technology, and where our technology comes from is ultimately from our people. And so, yes, we've created a massive tenant improvement project, built out a 86,000 square foot facility right off of Tower Road near the airport. But ultimately, it's our people, right? And you have to understand, in food tech and food ingredients, there's a very big manufacturing aspect to it. But for what we're doing, there's a lot of R&D as well. If people have been eating mushrooms for millennia, but no one had been using it as a catalyst for fermentation like we have. And so that does require a special set of individuals, from a microbiology background, the mycology background, chemistry background, you name it. We need all of that to really create the products and create the novel products that we have started and will be coming down the pipeline in the future years.
And something that you guys, I think, have done a really good job of is the R&D, because you had a really interesting product early on, and then you've continued to innovate and have build new products, invent new products. How does an organization divide focus, right? And say, we're going to really push forward with this one product, but we also need to continue to see if there's going to be these other products that could work. I mean, how do you really set an organization up like that?
Yeah, the shiny object syndrome is real. It's a dilemma across, really all startups, right?
Yeah.
Where should we pivot? Should we not pivot? How many lines should we have? We have finite resources, and that resources is ultimately people. And where should we focus our time? And a lot of it comes down to the time frame, right? So if there's something that we can get to market in an earlier time frame that we're able to get through regulatory, we're going to push that first. But we don't want to forget about the other aspects that may take a lot longer. And so the products I've mentioned on this cast so far is our Gen 1. These are readily available for the for CPGs, flavor companies, and contract manufacturers over a number of countries, over 100 countries, for our Clear IQ, and just south of that for Ferment IQ. And so we've already taken it worldwide. But we also have new products that we can bring to the market that also go not to get away from what our mission is, and being able to create new products that could continue to help make food taste great, but make it healthier. So we're trying to not sway away from that.
I love that. And your role as a CFO, I know that early on that meant a lot of different hats, right? And I'm sure it continues to as the company grows. Where is really your focus now for the stage of company that you're in?
Yeah, it changes all the time, right?
Sure.
So when we're heavily fundraising, I spend a lot of my time there, but I wouldn't be able to do that without the support of my team, especially, but the entire organization in general. And that means being able to take a step back in the day-to-day operations of production and of month-end closes, and being able to really lean on a strong team. Culture is a big part of that. You need to be able to get the team aligned, get the company aligned, and all drive to that common purpose. And without that, or doing it the wrong way, pushing from the back, whipping individuals, it's not going to work. You end up getting massive amounts of attrition. That's something that's already happening to probably everybody at this point of time.
Yeah.
That own not only small businesses but large businesses as well. So that means we have to work even harder to make the culture a place where people want to work and not leave just for another dollar somewhere else, etc.
And then do you tie that, people wanting to stay with Myco down to, your mission, and that you're working on something, so important for, really humanity in everyone's daily life? Like, is that what keeps people at Myco?
Absolutely, especially early on, being able to bring products to the market that really change the lives of people, right? And I look at it as a little bit differently, coming from a pharma background. Being able to create cancer treatment is fantastic, right? We need to be able to do more of that, and capitalism is one of the ways to really get better products to the marketplace. But if we really look at the amount of drugs that we're taking on a daily basis, whether that's acetaminophen or aspirin or anything else that individuals take, insulin, for instance, if we look at, a lot of this stems back to what we're putting in our bodies every day. The majority of us eat 3 days or 3 times a day, 365 days a year, right? So that's over 1,000 times that we're putting product into our body that we don't necessarily know where it comes from all the time. It wasn't like in the hunter and gathering days where you can pick an apple off a tree and eat it.
Right.
That just doesn't happen anymore. And so there's a lot of great technology, even outside of what we're doing in biotech, to really help show the end customer that really matters, whether that's blockchain technology, to be able to track, where your coffee beans come from, for instance. But ultimately, being able to eat healthier will definitely decrease the onset of a number of diseases going forward.
You hit on something that is interesting. I think it's a personal challenge. Is there's so much new technology going on, and there's so much new information, and how do you personally stay on top of that, right? Because you're trying to be the company that, is the innovative one with new products, new ideas, you name it, but you also need to understand what's going on around you and how that changes everything.
Yes.
Do you make a habit of that, of reading certain articles, certain things? Like, how do you be a person that can stay on top of all the change that's happening in your industry?
I don't think any one person can. It takes a village, right? And so whether that's the marketing team or an analytics team being able to source this stuff to really get a number of readings done in a given month is extremely helpful. But utilizing keywords in Google, right, and being able to track that and ultimately a digest in your inbox on a daily basis is more than meaningful.
Interesting. So you'll actually do that. You'll do keywords and get relevant content. That's interesting.
Exactly. Yeah, it's already set. So then I just get that digest on a daily, weekly basis, however you want to set it, and that just helps keep up with of the news in the industry. Obviously, trade publications for your industry are very much needed, and fortunately, there are a number of institutions that are working in the future of food that you can easily get that information on. Keep up with what your competitors are doing as well. Ultimately, there's going to be a lot of room for all of us to play. Again, whether it's fermented foods, cultured food, still eating livestock, or still traditionally gathering protein from vegetable sources as well.
Yeah,
we're going to need it all in order to feed the population.
Right. People who, I'm sure you would almost look competitive. It's such a big market that there's probably more partnership opportunities than actual competition.
Absolutely.
Well, I want to talk about, your career. You started at Myco, 6+ years ago now, and you started, I believe, as a controller, worked your way up to the CFO pretty quickly. What do you put that down to? what led you to rise so quickly in a really growing company to a CFO role?
Yeah, early on in my career, I really learned the difference between just a tenure in a position versus really being able to understand, right, get that substance in, and those are two totally different aspects. Especially in finance, you need to be a sponge. And so I get the comment a lot, looking back at it, it's like, are you a biochemist? Are you a chemical engineer? What's your background? You're able to explain the story so well, or the process so well. And it's taking the time to do that, especially right from the beginning, right? Learn from the rest of your leaders in the organization, and really just be a sponge and grasp that information and practice it. And that helps a lot to get finance away from being perceived as a cost center to being somewhere where you can actually generate wealth for the organization, and it doesn't have to do with money.
Interesting. So you were trying to learn every part of the business really early on so that you could apply it then to your role and see where you could add the most value.
Completely. So, going all the way back to, to creating Petri plates and being able to grow up our cultures. It really gives you a perspective, of what needs to be done. And then you can find ways to solve these challenges years on as a CFO or a leader of any organization.
And it probably makes you more dangerous in the fundraising side and the joint venture side, because you know the business so well, but you also know the product so well, which isn't always the case with the CFO, right?
Exactly. And then being able to tell that story in layman's terms, right?
Yeah.
It's different to, have our head of science or CSO reach out to a bunch of scientists and speak at a different level. But for the standard institutional investor, even they won't have that knowledge set. So how can you translate that into ultimately an investable vehicle? And that's what's important. So for us, we spent a lot of time looking at a number of different aspects of the organization, and really well hits home to our investors and the needs and challenges of our strategics and customers.
Well, you're clearly, a sponge and a curious person, and that's probably what got you to this next topic, which is you're also the founder of a distillery, Molly Brown. Tell us how that happens when you're, the CFO of MycoTechnology, and then now you're the distillery too.
That's going to be a story for another podcast for sure. But I have co-founded Molly Brown with a couple of other individuals, and it's definitely a passion of mine. I've spent some time owning a bar, having a brewery, but the distillery, especially bourbon, is really what I'm passionate about, and that goes all the way down to our brand. So there are plenty of Jim, Jack, Ezra's in the world, but you're going to have to look really far to find a female centric brand, and that's for a number of different aspects. I'll start with the major one. And then that's all of our wives, our mothers that have helped us out along the years that we've been on Earth, and got through some really tough times, right? Everyone has that story about how their mom or their wife or their sister has done that, and we wanted to be able to bring that to the masses. And so we've called it Molly Brown. All of our drinks in the tasting room are named after prominent women, both historical and fiction, as a testament of being able to showcase that love. A great side aspect of that is that when it comes to distilled spirits, the brown spirits, the barrel-aged spirits, are the fastest growing, especially for females. So why not be able to take a entrepreneurial ride and being able to bring that to the masses? And that's what we're doing here in Colorado. It's all grain to glass. So we get our grains from Loveland. We bring it down. We do everything but malting. So all of the distilling is done in-house, barrel aging, and bottling, all in-house in our facility, which is up on roughly 77th and York Street.
It's amazing. How are you doing two roles that are so demanding? How do you structure your week around that?
It's difficult, right? It's a lot of sacrifice. It goes back to the sacrifices that my wife makes on a daily basis with two small kids at home as well. Um, when I'm not traveling or working long hours in the office, it's making a commute out to the distillery and continue that brand and able to help with negotiations accordingly. And it's time consuming. You have finite resources.
Yeah.
You have to find the time that really makes you happy, and ultimately, being able to change and impact lives on both the food side as well as the spirit side is where I find my calling, at least for the time being.
Makes the investment totally worth it. But on a tactical level, though, because I know everyone, you can easily say, I find the time. I mean, how there's certain things that you do that really are time savers, or you set your day up, your week.
Yeah.
I'm always trying to find out what those little nuggets are as put in my own life.
Yeah, I'm not an early riser just on my own. So my alarm helps significantly with that. And it was funny. I was just talking to a friend of mine today about 23andMe, and I think one of the things tells you about what time you wake up. I'm pretty much in the late morning for me. So since I drink a lot of coffee, which I do, but you just gotta do it, right? You gotta push through those painful aspects. You work late the night before. You have a men's league, beer league hockey game late into the night. Don't just sleep in just for the sake of being able to sleep now and feel better. When you need a lot of rest, take it.
Yeah.
But if you can get right back up at 6 and do it again, do it. But that means working in the night as well. Don't sacrifice your family all the time. If you can skip a business meal to be home with the kids, do it.
Yeah.
It'll ultimately give you a little bit of rejuvenation where you'll want to work that evening into the night and then start all over again the next day.
Right. So you'll pass on a meeting knowing that you can do the work after dinner when the kids have gone to bed.
Exactly.
Yeah. Makes total sense. As we, start to wrap up, I love talking about, I'm a big quote person. I don't know if you have a favorite quote that runs your life, or not necessarily runs your life, but, is like a leading quote.
Yeah. Interesting. This is a bit cheesy, but I truly believe it. Being a big hockey fan, it was at least said that the great one said it. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? And something that happens to come with the profession is being conservative, but don't let that conservativeness, ruin your passion, right? It's not cheap to start a distillery. It takes a lot of guts to invest in a number of different companies, but you find ways to make that happen, and if that means you end up driving a jalopy, so to speak, in order to fund some of these things, do it, right? Stay away from depreciating assets, buy the ones that appreciate.
Well spoken by a true finance person. What about a favorite book?
Two come to mind. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, especially from where I came from. Not many of my family have been formally educated past high school, right? So the first in my family to get a master's, at least my immediate family, but ultimately really make the right investment decisions, which I just spoke about prior. And then the second one was how to make a spaceship. And what I really like about that book is it really showcases the entrepreneurial journey. Granted, the farthest reaching journey that man can take at this point in time. But it really showcases why capitalism still matters, and why truly that the entrepreneurial journey is not for everyone. And I really commend everyone that is willing to take it a step further, start their own company, whatever it is. If it's a space company, more power to you. But definitely, I would recommend that book.
It takes a lot of guts. I mean, I think you said that well, and I'm sure started the distillery. It was the same type of thing, right? It's a decent financial commitment, time commitment. What got you over that fear to make the leap?
failure.
Yeah.
I've failed before this. I'll probably fail again. But again, you keep taking shots, you're bound to be successful at some point in time. It's not what you learn about or I shouldn't say it's not what you learn, in school, things like that. It's what you learn about what not to do. Ultimately, is the biggest thing that I would part with to everyone listening right now. You gain a lot of experience from your failures and how not to do it the next time.
And what would you say are some of your biggest lessons of what not to do to wrap us up?
Get the right people on the bus, get the wrong people off the bus as soon as possible. It all comes back to to the people that you're working with on a daily basis. You spend more time with your colleagues than you do with your own family sometimes, and it's not worth sticking around and having people that ultimately can bring an entire organization down.
That's well said. Really well said, Jonathan. This was such a pleasure. Really appreciate it.